In this video, we're going to be talking about how to stay consistent and a few tangible tips that I've been using to be able to study now for over 500 days in a row without burning out. Consistency is at the root of progress, and the people who achieve the highest levels of success are those who are able to find ways to develop their skill or knowledge consistently. For example, the best athletes in the world are the ones who put in the work day in and day out to master their craft, and they're great examples of what it takes for us to master our own crafts. As unfortunate as it may sound, I think we're all aware that anything worthwhile doesn't come immediately, and mastery never really comes after the first try. Leadership expert John Maxwell says small disciplines repeated with consistency every day lead to great achievements gained slowly over time. So if we find ways to incorporate consistency in our own lives on the skills or knowledge we want to master, we're going to be giving ourselves the best chance at great achievements. What's up, YouTube? If you're new here, my name is J.R. Smith. I'm a medical student at the Mayo Clinic, and I'm committed to growth both as a student and most importantly as a person, and I want to do those things with you guys. Today we're going to be talking about consistency, why it can be so challenging, and some of the things that I do that has allowed me to work on my craft now for over 500 days in a row. As always, you can find timestamps in the description below, but I recommend watching from beginning to end to get the most on this topic. So first, of course, I have to show proof of the statement, I studied over 500 days in a row. So Anki, the study tool that I use, actually tracks the days that I use it, and you can see here that my current streak is 511 days at the time of recording this video. Anki is a flashcard tool, and I'll leave a link in the description below on a video describing how I use it if you're interested. But as you can see, I've done on average 485 cards per day for the last 511 days. Now, I do have to emphasize that there is a very wide range on the amount of cards that I do per day. Some days are much more than 485 and some are much less than 485. But the goal has been to just open the app and start studying regardless of the other things that I have going on or how I may be feeling that day. Which does mean that on holidays, birthdays, and even days I have exams, I have spent at least some time studying. Now, this has done absolute wonders for me in so many different ways. I've been able to stay ahead of my coursework, which has opened up a ton of free time for other things that I'm interested in, all while making true strides in mastering my medical knowledge and skills that will eventually serve me as a doctor. Ultimately, the benefits of consistency are endless, but I found two things that really stand out. The first is the role that it has in developing discipline and self-control. If you can develop consistency in a single task, you'll be that much more likely to develop it in others. Just like most things in life, discipline can be developed. You can think of it as one of your mental muscles. When we choose to do something on a day in and day out basis, we are exercising our mental muscle of discipline. And the stronger this muscle becomes, the more likely we'll be able to incorporate more consistency in other areas of our lives. The other benefit I've really come to appreciate from consistency is that it leads to exponential growth in the tasks you're doing. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, discusses how improvement is not linear, but it's actually exponential. He says that if you improve just 1% a day for a year, you'll end up 37 times better at that thing that you're working on. This highlights the fact that it's small improvements over time that ultimately compound to show big change. And this is a really important point and actually brings our attention to how we can embrace consistency while avoiding burnout. If we feel the need to accomplish big things immediately and make 10% improvements every day, our goal immediately becomes unsustainable, and just by even attempting it, we find ourselves burnt out before we know it. And this is how I've been able to avoid burnout over the last 500 days, because on some days I allow myself to just study for really short periods of time. And if I'm being honest, some of those days are literally like 5 minutes. But because this has been done consistently, even on days where I don't study for those long periods of time, I'm still able to stay ahead on my work. Now, of course, doing something every single day is much easier said than done, and one of the reasons why we struggle with this is our need for instant gratification. With access to everything from information to food almost immediately, our brains have been rewired to lose motivation when things don't happen immediately. And we've already discussed how it's those small, seemingly unnoticeable 1% changes that ultimately lead to the big improvements. So if we can begin to eliminate our need for instant gratification, we can become one step closer to achieving consistency in our lives. Another reason consistency can be so hard is that we don't really have habits that support the action that we want to make consistent in our life. And I apologize in advance if some of you may feel attacked by this next statement. Let's just say our goal is to wake up early in the morning, but we have a habit of going to bed late because we have to watch the next episode and the episode after that of our favorite TV show. It is very unlikely that we will actually accomplish our goal of waking up early in the morning. And even if we are able to wake up early in the morning for a few days while we have that burst of motivation, if we continue to go to bed late, it'll be impossible to achieve this goal consistently. Now, the last reason consistency can be so hard has to do with something we've already mentioned, which is getting burnt out. When you're burnt out, that means your motivation literally gets thrown out the window along with that goal you made of studying, exercising, or reading every day. And many of you have probably felt how challenging it is just to get out of bed when you're burnt out, let alone accomplishing a goal that you made for yourself when you actually had motivation to do so. So now that we know how important but challenging consistency is, what are some things that we can do to actually bring some of that consistency into our own lives? Well, you'll see that the following tangible tips are directed towards addressing the reasons why consistency is hard. The first tip is to have a goal that does not have a finish line. This means that your goal should simply be to show up for the task that you're trying to build consistency in. The goal is just to start every day, not to do a predetermined amount. This is because every day will present unique challenges to your goal of consistency, whether that be time constraints or just low motivation. So again, whether your goal is to study, exercise, or read every day, the objective is just to start. And what you're doing by setting your goal like this is you're actually making the hardest part of this entire process a lot easier. By telling yourself that success is simply starting, you're much more likely to actually start. And then Newton's law of inertia takes care of the rest. Inertia essentially is the tendency for an object to continue doing what it's doing. So something at rest has a tendency to stay at rest, and something in motion has a tendency to stay in motion. Overcoming inertia or transitioning from rest to motion requires a force. And in the case of us doing that action that we want to be consistent with, that force is motivation. Okay, that's enough of the physics talk for the day. But some days we may be motivated to study for 5 hours, while other days we know right away that that's just not happening. But if all we need to do is start, then we're minimizing the amount of motivation needed to do so. And then Newton's law of inertia actually helps us. Because once we're going, it's that much easier to stay going. The next tip to be able to develop consistency is to track your progress. When you begin to keep track of how many days in a row you accomplish your goal, which again is just to start, you begin to build a bank of motivation that comes from just not wanting to see your streak end. Once the pain of starting is less than the pain you would feel if you broke your streak, you'll be that much more motivated to start. The next tip I have is to start your task at the same time every day. If your goal is to study every day, try setting a time that you begin studying. For me, this was 5:30 in the morning because I knew nothing else would be going on at that time. When you have a specific time of the day that you accomplish your task, your brain will start making the connection between that time of day and the task that you want to accomplish, which makes it that much easier to do it. And eventually it becomes a habit. And when something becomes a habit, you can almost do it on autopilot. It has been well reported that it takes around 66 days to develop a habit. So when you're tracking your progress, I wouldn't expect things to feel significantly easier until you reach that mark. But eventually, it will be more challenging to break this habit than to actually break your consistency. The final tip for maintaining consistency is to regularly fill your cup. If you are regularly pouring from a pitcher without refilling it, you no longer be able to get anything from that pitcher. We're the same way, so being intentional about taking the time to do the things that you know gives you energy is just as important as taking the time to accomplish the tasks that require you to use that energy. Each one of these tips are designed at making it easier to start and maintain that task that you want to make consistent in your life. A bonus tip on getting the most out of consistency on a given task is to maximize your focus when you're doing that task. And I talk about how to do that in this video here, so make sure you check it out if you haven't already. But I hope that you all enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, keep evolving, and I'll see you guys in the next one.